Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dabo Swinney, the Clemson Tigers kicking off fall camp coming up August 1st. They'll want to dive into some of our biggest storylines for this Clemson program heading into the 2024 season. I think there are some fascinating storylines heading into fall camp. I think most importantly, this team is finally healthy for a fall camp. It seems like every single year Clemson has kind of just been decimated with injuries heading into a college football season. Year 2 under Garrett Riley, year 2 with Cade Klubnik as your starting quarterback, finally healthy at the wide receiver position. A lot of reason to believe this offense takes a step, fired up to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys, the Clemson fans. It's been a blast talking this program, whether it's on the recruiting trail or preview in 2024. All the support from the Clemson fans, it's been amazing. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, we're going to talk some storylines. We're going to predict some breakout players. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section because what you guys throw down there, that's probably what we're talking about over the next couple of weeks as it relates to this Clemson program. And Dill, without further ado, let's get into our first biggest storyline, and that's the wide receiver rotation. Again, kind of how I opened. Clemson, the last couple of years, they've just been decimated with injuries in the pass catcher room. You look at Cade Klubnik, year 2 under Garrett Riley, finally healthy at the wide receiver position. I think now the question is, who are going to be the guys for Clemson in this wide receiver room? You have a ton of young talent that's coming into this Clemson program, highlighted by TJ Moore and Brian Wesco. I'll ask you first, who do you think kind of makes that move and kind of puts a stamp on being the guy for this Clemson wide receiver room heading into the 2024 season?
Yeah, I mean, and take my opinion for what it's worth. I really don't think any of us know. I mean, I
agree.
Antonio Williams is going to be the guy to bounce back and make it happen. I thought, again, as a freshman or his younger years, played really some pretty good football. I think at the end of the day, they just need to find some way to get this offense in rhythm. It's not even like looking for guys to break out. It's just wide receiver quarterback connection just needs to be sharp. Last year, we kind of talked like it felt like they were always missing things by a little bit. Like whether they had that screen open against NC State and they sail it. It's like that type of play where it's there, they had the play, and they're just missing it by half an inch. It felt like that can't happen anymore because when you're trying to be Clemson, you're trying to win national titles, you just don't have room to make those type of errors. So that, more than like a guy emerging, I'm just kind of looking like, is this unit in conjunction with Cade Klubnik going to just look smoother at the end of the day?
That's the by far the biggest storyline for this Clemson program heading into 2024. That's what I'll be reading the fall camp notes for, right? Does Cade Klubnik look more comfortable in this offense? Is he being a little bit more consistent every single day in practice? Because, again, consistency was kind of Cade Klubnik's biggest downfall. Dill, for me, I'm looking for a big boundary wide receiver to emerge. I look at the middle of the field, guys like Antonio Williams and Tyler Brown and Jake Bringenstool at the tight end position. I love those three pass catching options for Cade Klubnik. Now, for I think this Garrett Riley offense to really work for Clemson, you need your Quentin Johnston, for lack of better terms. Going back to TCU in 2022, you look at how important Quentin Johnston was, not only to manufacturing explosive plays himself, but just being a wide receiver that if you're the defensive coordinator, you have to game plan for. You have to put a safety over top. Who's going to break out and be that true boundary wide receiver one? Is it going to be Adam Randall? Is it going to be true freshman TJ Moore? They have some names that can emerge. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I think you got some known commodities, right? A healthy Antonio Williams, a healthy Tyler Brown, Jake Bringenstool. You know what you have. Is it going to be Adam Randall? Is it going to be Brian Wesco or TJ Moore? That's kind of the question mark I have for this wide receiver room. Dill, going to our second biggest storyline and kind of, at least in my opinion, something not enough people are talking about, and that is how good this Clemson offensive line can be. And why we talk about the offensive line rotation, one, going back to last year, it just kind of seemed like, partly because of injuries, they were just kind of rotating and just bouncing guys all over the place. I think heading into this fall camp, can we find our best starting five and then stay healthy through the duration of the season? Because if they can do that, I look at this Clemson offensive line and say it's probably one of the better units that we see in the ACC heading into the 2024 year.
And I actually think this is one of the more unsettled position groups because I think there are two guys who our lads is listing as backups. notably Harris Sewell and Colin Sadler, who can both push for spots. I mean, that battle at the center spot is no doubt the real intense one. It feels like I think everyone kind of knows that's being waged, if you will. But I think Colin Sadler, again, with his versatility and ability, I think to play almost every 5 positions, you saw him work at tackle and guard. I thought he had a really nice season for only a redshirt freshman. He's a guy I'm kind of looking for to see if, again, like Walker Parks and Marcus Tate have played solid football, but I don't know that they're immune from getting beat out if Colin Sadler makes more of a jump because he can play.
So the thing I'd say with that, and I would agree, the center position, obviously, that's kind of the unsettled position. I'm personally a Harris Sewell guy. I think he's going to be really good for Clemson. That being said, I kind of look at Colin Sadler and say, Dabo Swinney's got a massive commodity there in terms of like a swing 6-man that pretty much anybody besides the center position that goes down with an injury, like Colin Sadler could probably come in and play all 4 positions on the offensive line, which is massive when you're Clemson. You talk about it at the top, winning national championships. You have to be 6, 7, 8 deep on your offensive line. It's not just about your starting 5. It's not the flashy conversation to have necessarily in terms of talking depth in the preseason. That being said, Dabo Swinney knows it's important. And kind of having a guy like Colin Sadler who I think can be that swing guy, that utility piece, that might be massive in terms of that 6-man off the bench that can play a lot of different roles. But I'm with you. I think Colin Sadler's a ball player.
And I also am kind of wondering if this offensive, they got pretty good by the end of the year. That's kind of what I'm looking for is like, can they go from good to being almost like what we call a dominant offensive line, a really good unit in the ACC and nationally? Because I think this is probably the first year I look at it and say they have legitimate talent to be that kind of line in a long time. I feel like we've spent like past 3 or 4 years almost looking at this Clemson line like, oh, can we just cobble this together and make it work? I'm kind of looking. You have a lot of talent there. You have a lot of experience for the first time in what seems like, again, like 3 or 4 years. Can this unit be great?
A lot of these guys that we're talking about going into their 3rd, 4th, or 5th years with this program were the young cats that we were talking about starting the 2022 season. So, yeah.
That was like the hope. That was like, can these guys come in and make something happen? Because, again, there did feel like you went through a little period where you just didn't love what they had up.
And I think there are 2 reasons to believe this offensive line might reach that quote-unquote great unit. One, Matt Luke coming in. Dog of an offensive line coach. He just does a good job wherever he goes. I think secondly, continuity. These guys have played together largely for the last couple of seasons. Now you got to stay healthy. That's obviously something that's outside of their control. But if this offensive line finds their starting 5 and then stays healthy for 12 football games, I think this offensive line can be really good. I look at a guy like Blake Miller and say that could be one of the better offensive tackles we see in all of college football. They'll a sneaky another kind of conversation, again, not a flashy conversation to have, but a conversation that's important to this Clemson team's success. Who's running back 2? You make no mistake about it who our running back 1 is. He's one of the better running backs in the ACC in the country, and Phil Maffa. Dill, you don't have a proven commodity as a running back 2. Now, my pick, I'm just going to kind of put my flyer out there, kind of one of my breakout players. I'm going to mess up his name, David Ezukwemi. He's a true freshman. I remember talking about him and messed up his name when he committed to Clemson way back in the day. 6'1", 210 pounds, runs a 10.8 in the 100-meter dash. I went back to his senior film to kind of get a sense of, do I think he can be a true freshman contributor for this Clemson offense? This kid attacks the line of scrimmage, which is something that we don't always say with freshman running backs. Those are the kind of growing pains that you see as guys kind of relying going east and west at the high school level. And then when they're not the fastest player on the football field, they struggle. David, he attacks the line of scrimmage. He wants to get downhill. He definitely has the physicality to play as a freshman. That's the name I'm looking at in terms of, hey, who's going to come onto the field when Phil Maffa needs a break? Give me the true freshman coming in at the RB2 spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that I don't think they're going to need to rely on an RB2 that much just because the way Phil Maffa can be that workhorse and really a ball-dominant number 1 running back, where it's, again, you see good running backs who you kind of think, well, do you want him 20-plus touches a game? I don't feel like Phil Maffa will have any issue doing it. Probably going to be able to sustain himself just fine. But I think you are right. You do need that second guy, and obviously a bit of attrition in the portal, obviously losing Shipley. It's kind of an open battle, it feels like, at this point.
I'm kind of fascinated to see who emerges because, again, these guys are going to get a lot of opportunity to kind of take that running back 2 spot. Who's it going to be? Going to the defensive side of the football, Dill, I think you got to start with the young talent on the defensive line breaking out now. TJ Parker, Peter Woods, I just saw a picture of Peter Woods in summer workouts. The dude looks like a freak. He's going to be such a good edge rusher for Clemson. All right, TJ Parker and Peter Woods, they've already broke out. They don't qualify. That being said, for Clemson, it's a kind of a talking point we've had throughout the offseason. What's the depth at the edge position look like? We didn't feel great about it going back to the months of February and March. We watched the Clemson spring game, started to feel really dang good about it. Can they be more consistent in fall camp? Because, again, that's kind of when you get these young guys separating in terms of, can you be a contributor early on in your career? Can you stay consistent during fall camp? I'm looking at guys like A.J. Hoffler. I'm looking at guys like Jaheim Lawson. Can they be guys that Clemson can rely on in that 2 to 3 deep? If they can, I mean, you're looking at a dominant front seven for this Clemson defense.
I mean, you're talking one of the better defensive line groups in the country if this edge group can kind of make it happen with their depth piece. So obviously, you know what you have at the top, but I think you said it right. You look at Jaheim Lawson and A.J. Hoffler, both had some real flashes, especially as like more athletic, like edge pass rushers, I feel like. And that's kind of one thing. TJ Parker can obviously do that, but I don't know that that's exactly Peter Woods and Kate Denhoff's game. Like, those two are bigger. Obviously, Peter Woods is probably going to be a hybrid, kicking in and out and playing a bunch of different roles, but he's obviously not necessarily just an edge rusher in a sense. Kate Denhoff, kind of a similar thing, bigger, physical, heavy-handed guy. Jaheim Lawson and A.J. Hoffler, they have that like kind of unique, twitchy pass rush that you kind of look for a guy who's really going to be productive. So, yeah, I think those two both have a role to play on this this defense. And I don't think you look at it, you know what you have in the middle. Obviously, you're really deep, you're really talented, but I think you do kind of wonder who are going to be those second, third guys.
Yeah, two things I'll kind of add. One, you start playing around with that, third and long pass rush package where, okay, we're going to keep TJ Parker on the edge. We're going to kick Peter Woods to the inside. And if you get an A.J. Hoffler, Jaheim Lawson, who become elite, I mean, how many offensive lines are picking that up on third and long? Another storyline that I would like to add is Vic Burley. I feel like just nobody talks about him because TJ Parker and Peter Woods were so good as true freshmen. Vic Burley arguably was the most talented of the group coming out in that 2023 cycle. Obviously missed last year with an injury. What does he look like going into year two? He's had a full offseason to kind of get that body right to be a contributor along the line of scrimmage. Man, what if Vic Burley emerges as another Peter Woods, TJ Parker? You're looking at a freaky defensive line.
If we see him on the field, I think you're pretty confident he can play because obviously you see at the top, Monte Capehart's about as good as it gets at the defensive tackle spot. I think he'll have a huge year. Peyton Page, Trey Williams, and Stephylon Green, all very, very good players. So again, if Vic Burley can get his snaps and be a part of this team, I think you look, yeah, he made it happen. He's back from that injury. He's ready to rock and roll and be good.
Nobody's talking about the inside of this defensive line. I feel like they think it's going to be weak because Peter Woods kicks outside. You lose guys like Tyler Davis and Rucco. I look at the inside of this Clemson defensive line and say this is going to be a dang good unit.
Well, not enough people watch the games because if you watch, you saw Monte Capehart's very much for a first-team All-ACC level.
Yeah, he's a dog. So, though I look at the linebacker room, I think the big question is what does Sammy Brown look like as a true freshman? You're loaded at linebacker, right? Barry Carter, Wade Woodaz, they're going to be hard to keep off or take off the field. Sammy Brown's going to be hard to keep off the field. And so at linebacker, I don't really have many question marks about that. You look at the secondary, maybe some question marks about the depth, but that young talent, I think my eyes are going to be on Jaden Lucas putting together a healthy offseason because he's also another really good football player. Let's get into, I'll give you the T-box here. One breakout player for this Clemson program during fall camp. Who you got?
I mean, I think it's going to be Wade Woodaz. I don't know if that constitutes as a breakout player. I know people kind of know what he's about, but I think he's going to be uniquely special for this Clemson offense or Clemson defense, I should say, and be a really good complement to, I think, what they're going to want Barrett Carter to be, which is a bit more of a playmaker.
Yeah, I'm in for that. And I think what makes this.
I was cheating a little bit, but it's tough. I mean, I look this defense, everyone's coming back. It's like, well, who's going to be the breakout? It's like Monte Capehart. I don't call him a breakout. I think he's a hammer, right? Their whole secondary is pretty much back. I think they're all very good, but I don't think they're breakouts. So it's tough to quantify a true breakout, I think.
Well, yeah, they return like more than you kind of would expect. I feel like the way people are talking about Clemson is like they got decimated to the NFL. Like they return a lot of their best football players. A lot of their best football players are second-year kids. That's what makes me so excited about not only 2024, but 2025 as well. Would love to hear some breakout players from you guys in the comment section. Appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.